Okay. So taking roll. Gregory Braille,
Mute button. Yes, I'm here.
Bill Burton,
I see him. I think he's unmuting.
Yep.
Yep.
okay. Tony Carrasco,
Here.
In-Young Cho,
Here.
Larry Klein,
Here.
Nadia Nayak,
Here.
Keith Reckdahl,
Here.
Dave Shen,
Here.
Carrie Templeton.
Here.
Okay, everybody's here.
Okay, cool. So first thing is staff updates. Do we have anything from the staff that we need to review? I had a question about the schedule, but we can probably talk about that when we talk about it in the next section.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. I just wanted to share coming off the a meeting today with Caltrain that they shared that under COVID, this might not be surprising as I share the details, but under COVID, the Palo Alto station has actually been the highest used station in the Caltrain network, and further kind of details in that it probably will make it more clear as to why some of the biggest usage are related to healthcare, and obviously healthcare employees and probably people seeking healthcare as well. So I think that those are obviously things that are very accessible through the Palo Alto station, and that's probably one of the drivers to Palo Alto being the highest usage station, surpassing San Francisco, the Fourth and King station.
Yeah, and I guess I could give an update, unless Philip, you want to give an update on briefly on the Measure B. You had sent us some information about Measure B. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's anything more that I need to share other than what I'd shared previously. Trying to remember, did I send the letter that we actually sent out to XCAP?
Or not to XCAP, you mean to VTA?
No, but I'm asking if I shared the letter that was sent to
Yes.
VTA with XCAP. So I think there's not much other than that to add, except for the meetings were a lot of comments of concern were provided by various agencies. We received other agencies that had also provided similar comments to ours, and we're currently working to see if a joint letter can be sent on some of these issues.
Great. And for members of the public who don't know, Measure B is the 2016 tax measure that we would use to fund grade separations. And there was a percentage of that money earmarked for BART and a percentage of that money earmarked for grade separations. And the latest 10-year plan showed the money going all to BART and not coming to grade separations in the near term. And it was just an idea. It's not final, but it made people get quite upset. So I did attend the meeting.
I guess just to provide a little further information, it wasn't just grade separation funding that was removed from their 10-year plan, but they said it was just for the idea of getting the conversation started, but other formula funding, including funding for local streets and roads, funding also for Caltrain capacity enhancements, and funding for the state route 85 and several other programs were kind of left out, with the idea that VTA had that we would have a discussion and fill them in. But the reality that I think many of the commenters and ourselves stated was that, that there wasn't enough funding left after the funding had been primarily provided to BART phase 2 and really accelerated. And also some concern that the funding that they had initially been planned in the measure was 1.5 billion for BART phase 2, and that there was a cap of 25% of all the Measure B funding that was supposed to be allocated to BART phase 2, and that's in the resolution. And this proposal that was shown to us that they said was just for illustrative purposes exceeded the 25% and was closer to $2 billion than 1.5 billion.
The good news is Supervisor Simidian is on the case. He spoke during public comment and seems quite involved. So yay.
Yeah, so Supervisor Simidian, and yeah, he provided a really good history lesson on that measure, you know, going back to before the 2016 and noting that a lot of the pressure to get, you know, support from all the cities and really the polling stated that projects other than BART polled very, very well. And the BART polling wasn't actually even one of their highest measures that, you know, in the polling. So local streets and roads actually was the highest polling thing. And that program in the 10-year scenario was not filled in. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. It's back before, I think as an information item, it's scheduled to go before the board on December 3rd. So.
Great, thank you.
Well, was there any
Elaine?
feedback on that afternoon, which you attended or presented, I should say? Phil, Nadia, you were there too, weren't you?
I was not, I think Philip was at the tech. I was at the actual board meeting of the policy, well, actually at the policy advisory committee meeting. So what ended up happening was,
Yes,
even though it was
yeah.
an informational item, all of the, it was a unanimous decision by everybody there, decided to basically refuse to accept the report, which was sort of a notable thing, which is why it got written up in the newspaper. And so that, even though this is going as an informational item to the supervisors, it will go, part of the staff report will be that the policy advisory committee basically refused to accept the report because they didn't think that that was a believable starting scenario for anything, basically.
Oh, that's encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just noting, Nadia, not to correct you, but I was actually at
Oh, no,
both.
please do.
meetings.
Okay.
I was at both. So I was actually referring to the PAC, the policy
Great.
advisory committee meeting. That's where Simidian spoke. We had serious concerns in the TAC, which were expressed, but as an information item, it was kind of an interesting discussion is, can staff or can the committee actually take action on a non-action item? It was an informational item, but eventually what they decided is they can take action on it because they, you know, they can take action however they want to. And it was under the action calendar. So they decided to reject the report.
Yeah. Tony, you had a question?
Sort of a related question on an earlier part that Philip spoke about is the downtown section and how do we address not having that section in our report. We need at least a sentence or a paragraph describing why we didn't include that.
Oh, I think Philip was talking about Measure B, the stuff at VTA. I think you're talking about that our XCAP report should have a sentence about Palo Alto Avenue being moved to a different section. And I believe that that is already in chapter 2 in the context section.
It's explained about why we're not considering it.
Well, Phil, do you remember? I know that I put it on, I'm creating this master timeline, and I know that I have on there the date at which the council removed Palo Alto Avenue from our discussion. I don't remember if in words we put that into the report itself, but that's a good reminder. I will make a note to add that into the chapter 2.
My recollection is that we do have a sentence in there saying that was deliberately removed from our purview by the city council.
Yeah, that's what I thought I remember. I will make a note to check.
What more can we say?
Well, we could say as a group that, and we can maybe deliberate this in the next section because I think we're not agendized correctly. So why don't we hold it for the report writing section? But I think it is worth a discussion about whether we want to send the message that we thought that was a bad idea. So,
Second sentence.
yes. But we'll talk about that again in a second so that we're in the right segment of the agenda. Anybody, anything else on staff updates? That's what we're currently agendized for. All right. Seeing
That's it.
none, I think then we can go to oral communications. And so again, this is for anybody who has an item not on the agenda. And it looks like I've got one hand. I think Ripon and Sarah are going to help me with this today.
Right. So someone with their hand up is Miss Carrie Wagner. Miss Wagner, I will. Okay, you should now be able to unmute yourself and begin talking.
Hi, XCAP. Thank you so much for the work you've done on this project. I have 3 general comments, and first is please do not put a viaduct in the middle of the city. It will really divide the city between the viaduct and Oregon Expressway. The city will be 4 quadrants, and I really fear that the Southwest due to our lack of public transport and really city services. I just think that we would never recover from that, and nobody wants to live next to a viaduct. The other thing I want to say is the eminent domain options. Really, we have options that don't require eminent domain, so I just can't see how we can justify taking people's homes from them. So I would really prefer we not use any option that requires eminent domain. And then my last favorite topic is the bike pedestrian underpass or an overpass. Ideally at Matadero Creek, we really need one of those. And we need a separated bike pedestrian crossing in South Palo Alto, and Matadero Creek would be a really good place for it, especially with the new housing going up in Ventura. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for your work.
Okay, I think that's it for.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so that brings us to XCAP member updates and working group updates. So this is the part where usually we talk about kind of how it's going. I have actually I spent some time today trying to come up with a document that sort of summarizes where we are and where we're headed to help everybody visualize what's going on. So let me figure out how to share my screen here. Okay, let's see. So I tried to color code everybody. It's kind of hard with this many people, so apologies in advance. This is the chapters that we have left to do. So executive summary, Larry and I need to start digging into that, and we've agreed we're going to start to work on that. We've done the intro, chapter 1 and chapter 2. We edited those at the last meeting. Chapter 3, of course, is what you guys have been working hard on, and that's the meaty chapter. And what I hope to do today is review the stuff that Tony and Carrie did, which is the discarded alternatives, which is frankly a pretty short section. So hopefully we can get that under our belt. And then in addition, look at the safety section together that Greg had worked on. And then in terms of the sections that are being written, there's a Churchill section that Dave and In-Young have been working on. I wanted to see if we might be able to get one more volunteer to be able to help them. They're pretty close. They just, there's a section about comparing and contrasting things that rather than cut and paste the matrix in, we need to put that whole section into words. And so we can, Greg, maybe we can show how to do that unless you've already shared with Dave Shen what that might look like. And then, okay.
I shared the doc.
Great. And then on my to-do list with Keith and Phil is we're working on the dissenting opinion for Churchill. So just know, Dave, that we'll get that to you. And then for South Palo Alto, Keith and Greg kind of have a heavy load here. So I'm trying to recruit 1 or 2 more volunteers to help them. I actually did participate and help them a lot in here. So, but since we didn't make this public, I'm just realizing we might only be able to add 1 more volunteer here, right? Because you didn't make your version public today. Is that correct, Greg? Yeah.
Correct.
So, so question about who might be able to help out here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Can I just color commentary?
Please,
I think what's left is we've done some of the mechanical work of merging 4 docs into 1, although it could use some formatting help, which I can do later in the week. But I think what we need is someone who can look through and kind of do the deduplication of the center sections. Yep. Where one section says, I recommend we do further study on cost. And another section, if it says the same thing, maybe we could have a consolidated section at the end that says, here's all the things that we recommend. And here are the most important ones to focus on. I think that's probably the most thinking part of it that needs to be done. And then I think there's also a lot of like getting the format better.
Well, and so I'd love to think about as a group, because as I'm reading it, I feel like if I was a policymaker and okay, I'm reading about whatever, the viaduct. I want to know about the viaduct. What is it? And then I want to hear the compare and contrast. And then I want to hear suggestions on making the viaduct better. But then as a policymaker, I'm probably going to want to flip to the shorthand policymakers page where again repeated like, okay, what were all the suggestions that you have for all the alternatives? And
Right,
so,
right.
and I'm okay with there being duplication both within the section itself and then have a separate section that's recommendation.
Okay.
Because I think you're going to need both. And one will be more directed towards policymakers, where it'll be more of a list and with like reference pages, like go back and get more detail on this page. But it's probably okay. Does that sound logical to everyone? Does anyone think it ought to be done differently?
As long as it's intentional duplication, yeah.
Yeah, I think it sort of has to be. I just think it'll read better if we hold off like, okay, you just mentally you have me at the viaduct. We went into all this gory detail and then you don't tell me what else we can do going forward. I feel like we're missing the opportunity of engaging them if they took the time to read that chapter. And so in some ways, what we need is someone that's verifying that whatever is in the body of each section also ends up in the recommendations page. In some ways, it's a duplicator, not a deduplicator. That makes sense.
Nadia, why don't you put me as working with David and Young on the Churchill closer?
Okay, great. I'll put I'll put you here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd volunteer for Churchill if I didn't say I do a whole lot more this week, so.
No,
not
yeah.
this week.
In fact, I didn't put Larry down, but the options of people I was looking to have volunteer were basically Carrie, Tony, or Phil, mostly because they're done with their other work right now. And so, and I was giving Phil a break because Phil ended up writing several sections on his own for a while. So, okay, I'll put you here then, Larry. And so that means we need one more. So Carrie, Tony, or Phil, is either one of you able to volunteer for helping with the South Palo Alto section?
Nadia, my life has become really intense. So,
Okay.
and I'm not a good writer anyway. So
Fair enough.
I won't volunteer.
So what we might have you do at one point though, Tony, is if I can use your visual eye to help us with, graphics and that sort of stuff, that might be something we might be able to do when you have,
Sure.
when we
Yeah.
get to the polishing phase. If I can put you down for that, that'd be helpful.
Yes, sure.
Okay, great. Okay.
I had one question for Nadia.
Yeah.
In that section, Nadia added a really good timeline, which I have not seen all together in one spot before. So I think it's very valuable, but it doesn't seem like it should be in this section. It should be in one of the earlier sections. What
I
did you
agree.
think?
I think
Okay.
it's that'll probably get moved. For right now, it's living there because that's just where I did the bulk of the work. And actually, if I take a quick, if we flip over for a second, I don't know if the view flips over. This is Dave's and In Young's work. They had a, oh, sorry, no, that's Carrie's work. And Tony's. They have a little mini timeline here. And so part of what I was going to do is go through and make sure that I have these on the timeline that I created. But I created one giant master timeline, which has a lot and which is too much, but we'll probably put it somewhere in the appendix and then we can refer to it as needed and cut and paste for each of the alternatives if that's necessary.
Is there a spot early on? Do you want it in the appendix or do you want it up front?
Could have we could have it towards the beginning of the report. I think once we're done with more of the writing and it starts to come, I might turn it into its own independent document. So maybe what I hear you saying is that one of these should be just timeline. What do you think of that?
Yeah,
I would
think maybe you have the executive summary and then maybe you could put in the timeline right after the executive summary.
Sure. Okay. That sounds good. I'll make that change afterwards because moving stuff in a table is kind of a pain. But I actually have a different version that has all the citations on it because it was a pain to have to review like, okay, what council meeting was this decided at and when did this happen? And so it was hard work, which is why I've kept it all together in one place right now. Okay, so Phil or Carrie, do you think either of you might be available to help with that section?
What
and
is the
then-
time frame specifically between now and December 2nd?
So,
The time frame would be, let's see. So by Monday, November 30th, if you guys could have something, then that would get us ready for the December 2nd meeting.
Yeah, I could do
can't see it,
some.
and that's-
Yeah, I could do some work, but not till, let's say, the middle of next week.
Okay. Middle of next week. That's like halfway through Thanksgiving. Okay. It would be due on Monday, the 30th. And on
Oh,
the
I
South,
can work pretty quickly once I get going.
that's fine. On the South Palo Alto section, so let me just scroll down to here for a second. We can have a discussion about this piece and then you can see what I was proposing. So I'm trying to get us done before the end of the year. So that's kind of the goal here. So what I was hoping is by our next meeting on Monday, we would turn into Sarah the executive summary, or at least a draft that Larry and I would start, an updated version of Churchill, which we just said Larry, Dave, and Inyong are going to be working on. And then whatever the South Palo Alto folks can pull together. So Keith and Greg are going to keep working. And then if this is going to be filled, then that would be you two. And then we'd release it on the 30th. And that would mean that between the morning of the 30th and middle of the day for December 2nd, I would ask ex-cappers to have read the executive summary and Churchill, some of which has already been released today. So you're just kind of reviewing through. And then if there's time, which I doubt there will be, honestly, but then we could start looking at South Palo Alto. So if there's edits, we can turn those around. And then at that meeting, we'll review who's going to swap for the next chapter. And the idea would be we'd continue from there. And so basically, we're just going to keep trying to edit and release as fast as we can so that other people have time to review stuff. And if we're able to do this in enough iterations, then by December 16th, we should have a pretty close to final report. And then that means that I'm checking with staff about whether there's the possibility of a meeting December 30th, which I would rather not have, but if we have to, we can. And then that gets us into January. And at which point we should be on the final, we should be looking at a final full thing by then.
Nadia, could I ask you to go back to the that massive new chapter that's based partly on current chapter 4?
Chapter 3. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When do I start getting engaged by different people on that?
What do you mean?
I mean, so if people are going to use parts of chapter 4, even if I'm not officially listed as one of the edit from or reviewer, I expect to get engaged at some point.
Yeah. So what's happened, Phil, is they've taken your work that was chapter 4, Dave and Inyong and Keith and Greg, and they have usurped it into their chapters.
Okay, without needing my involvement.
Right. So when you go and edit those now, you're open to be able to edit those. Then, especially now that you're going to be working with the South Palo Alto folks, you can see how it's kind of pulled together.
All right. So I don't need to assume that I'll be engaged in the other parts of chapter 3 then.
No, I think you will eventually, because you're going to have to read them and give your edits. But for right now, you've just volunteered, if you're okay with it, to help with the South Palo Alto folks to finish putting in some meat in there.
All right. Okay.
And you'll see in their draft, they have some of your stuff in there. So some of it is cutting and pasting and moving stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, realistically and selfishly, I'm not going to work on the South Palo Alto stuff much after Friday. So either I will on Friday share it with everybody, or if someone else would like to work on it over the weekend and send it on Monday, then you can do that.
Right. Well, it's not this Friday, Monday. It's the following, right? Hold on. Let me look at the calendar.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not as bad.
Yeah, I'm like, just to be very clear, you have the entire week of Thanksgiving. So this is the Monday after Thanksgiving is when this would be.
Well, then that's easier. Okay.
So it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days.
Yep, definitely.
10 or 11 days.
Okay. Then we will definitely work on that. And then we can, we'll have a good shape by that.
And I will keep helping you as I have, because I've already put in a bunch of stuff. So hopefully, but I do need to focus some time with Larry to write the executive summary, which, as you guys all know, is sort of the one that'll get read probably first. So.
Nadia, I have a question about Brown Act.
Yes.
If we wanted to reset the Brown Act pairings, could we and not have a meeting? Could we publish stuff on the web so the whole world can see it? And then at that point, it's public knowledge and we could reset the pairings? Is that correct or not correct?
So yeah, that's how that's been working. I mean, it's what we did for that one time. So I have in here, like, for example, for this one, I wish I had a calendar that was visible, but we would turn in by the Monday after Thanksgiving, and then we'd have 2 days for us to hopefully read executive summary and the Churchill one. And then we're resetting at that point. If by Thursday of that week, South Palo Alto had some new additional edits, then we could reset the clock then. And then again on Monday, the 6th, again, if there's more edits of any of these chapters, we can try to reset that again so that as things become available, the others can edit. But basically we're using the meetings as a time when we do the complete swap. If it starts to get super long, because the South Palo Alto chapter, for example, is enormously long, it might run several meetings, and we might have to do a thing where we sort of just release everything but not have a meeting and give each other time to edit. But I think we'll know better at the end of the next meeting if that's how that's going to work.
Okay, so I'm looking at the 12.3 and 12.6. What are our our meeting schedule? Or I guess
Here, it's up here.
okay.
And so the question about December 30th is, staff, is the city open that week, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think you're going to have a hard time scheduling a meeting that week.
I kind of figured.
Sorry.
It's okay. No, it's not like I wanted to have it, but I just need to admit that it's a day on the calendar. It's a viable date. So I'm just going to put here no meeting.
I would recommend putting no meeting, but we could revisit it as we get maybe a little bit closer.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, we need time to breathe and be able to kind of review this stuff. It's just with my own experience, the longer this goes on, the less inspired any of us are to write about it. And
Right.
so I'd like us to just kind of get through the heavy, just get it done and get it over with, because if we let it go, if we're so relaxed and try to push it all the way to January, I'm afraid we'll just lose even more people and more
Right.
ability of folks to do stuff.
And I want to note that currently I put the XCAP to deliver the report on the January 25th council as kind of a hold.
Oh, I'd say give us February, Philip, because we have to finalize everything and then probably agree to what the presentation is going to look like, right?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to ask, is if I should push it to the next meeting, but sounds like we will do so.
Yeah,
So,
and
yes,
then question about, can you or Larry or can somebody give us some sense of like, what does a presentation like this look like to council? I mean, if Larry and I do PowerPoint presentations or something afterwards, does XCAP have to approve those PowerPoints in order for us to be able to present at that point? Or is it like, how does that work?
Well, I think that's more of an XCAP decision than a staff decision. So I think that's how you'd like to present it. But I think, I'm not sure, but I think probably a good way to handle it would be to present it as either an action item that they receive the report, or just a study session and just provide them with the report. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
I don't know, Ed, I saw in a staff report that it said that this would probably be over multiple study sessions. And so I'm not sure if they
Yeah, so
provided
sorry, that's
files or-
that. So I think that's the follow-up that would happen afterwards,
Okay,
that I had discussed kind of at a high level with the group. But I think the thought is that XCAP would provide the report, and then we'd go back to kind of answer any questions that might occur, and go through the different, potentially go through the different alternatives at the different locations to let council understand how XCAP made the decisions that you've made.
okay.
And yes,
I
I
don't
would like XCAP's participation, but not necessarily the whole group. Just everybody is willing to continue on.
Nadia, I don't think there's any need for the full XCAP to review PowerPoints. Presumably the PowerPoints are going to look pretty much like the executive summary.
That's what I figured.
So I don't think that's would be necessary. And what we're presenting to the council is really up to the council as to where they want to put it on their agenda. So we don't get to have an input on that. But either way, wherever they put it on the agenda, it's really going to be the same thing, that we're going to make a presentation. And I think that it would be good for really basically the whole committee to be available, because I think that we want to have people speak on some of their, where somebody has been in the minority or majority or whatever, to set forth why they've, for example, voted in favor of closure of Churchill. And I think it's an opportunity for the council to see all of, as many of the XCAP members as possible, just to get some feel for the whole group.
Yep, I agree. I think the more people, the better. We've all worked really hard on this, and I want to make sure that everyone is seen and heard to the extent possible.
And follow up on Phil's statement that there would be a second, whatever you want to call it, study session or whatever, however the council wants to denominate it. I think that it would be helpful if everybody on the XCAP was available for that meeting as well. Again, because there might be some questions that it would be more appropriate for one particular member to respond to rather than Nadia or anybody else for that matter.
Yep. And I'll also say, as someone who's had to present to council before, oftentimes there may be something that we forgot, that when another member of the group who knows a lot about it is watching, they can catch those things, and those presenting don't usually see that. So it helps us with our blind spots. So yes to all. Okay, so Phil, then I can put you down in this section for South Palo Alto.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. I'm going to put you here. Great. Any other questions in terms of the sections and kind of what work we have going forward? Okay. So I think we have to take public comment on this section if there is any, although that we don't usually have any, but let me just see if we have anybody from the public who wants to speak about our sausage making, as we keep calling it. Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hand, so I'm going to move on to the next part of the agenda. So next is the actual report writing. So I think what we're going to work on today is actually, I'm going to pull up the safety chapter, which Greg had worked on. And several of us have had a chance to edit it, but I just wanted to give others a chance to take a look at it and see if there's anything that we missed. Let's see. Let me share my screen again. You know what? I'm realizing. So XCappers, this version was released on, Greg, you're saying this version was already released, right? This is the one that you had sent to Sarah?
I think it's the one that I sent to Sarah. Yeah.
Okay, so XCappers, it's available on the November 11th agenda.
But it is entirely possible that I'm terrible at Microsoft Word merge changing, so I don't know. Every time I look at it, the comments show up differently.
So if XCappers want to read, it's if you go to the November 10th agenda, and then you go to the safety chapter, that's what we're looking at here. And so I'm going to give you guys, I don't know, the next sort of 10 minutes. It's going to be sort of like a elementary school, if you will, for folks to kind of read and then think about their feedback. For those of you who've already read this chapter, if you want to go ahead and read the discarded alternatives thing that Carrie and Tony wrote, which were available on today's agenda. So Greg and Phil, that could be someplace, something that you guys go read. And I'll give us about 10 minutes.
I'm going to look through my versions and figure out what's going on because I don't understand what's happening right now. Hold on.
I have the version on the screen, but I'm telling you that if you want to scroll through and read faster, right, then you can look at the...
I'm feeling like I might have shared an improper version somehow. So I'm going to go just take one more look at this.
Gotcha. Okay. No worries. got about 2 more minutes. Does everyone need a few more minutes, or do we think we can start? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to start. Okay, great. Okay, so overall impressions, I'm especially interested in those who've read this for the first time, because Phil and Greg and I have seen it before. I think Larry might have as well, but Dave or Tony or somebody else chime in.
Nadia?
Yeah, Tony, go ahead.
This is Tony. I noticed one thing that bothers me and has bothered me for a long time is the fence that's required if the train is on grade or if it's in a trench. And the area between the fence on the west side of the Caltrain tracks and the home fences will become a no man's land and a little unsafe, in my opinion, because it is hard to be policed. So there's a sliver that'll be a no man's land between the existing house fences and the fence required for the train.
Okay.
So that detail has to be resolved because we don't want to cause a place that's unpoliced.
Okay, that's a good point. Let's see what might be a good place to consider that.
That seems like in the safety considerations, we could recommend that.
Yeah, how
Not
about
sure
here in
how
the
to word
fencing
it, but
section?
yeah. I mean, basically, this is the section that came from Pat, and Pat was very passionate about fencing. But sort of like neither do we want to create. And you can just stick in a comment, and I can work on it later. That would probably be the easiest thing, honestly.
Okay, all right.
Would be to stick in a comment to the effect that the no person's land between the train fence and the house fences is also a safety issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to put no person's land. Okay, great. Any other thoughts?
Who's responsible for the safety at the stations?
Great question.
Is it Caltrain or is it the city?
Is there
I do.
such a thing as Caltrain police? I've never seen them.
It's got to be the city.
Yeah, but that,
Actually, sheriff. It might be the sheriff.
Mhm.
Amtrak has police, which is why I ask.
Philip, do you know?
Yeah, I think that I know that city will respond if there's a police call, but I do think that sheriff actually might have a contract with Caltrain. I need to look more into that though.
Okay, so how about I add something here about station area? And then I'll just put a note for you, Greg, if there's anything that we need to think about related to the station area that might be relevant.
Yeah, and if anyone has information, then I can stick it
Yeah,
in.
Greg, I'm not sure that Amtrak is currently operating the railroad under contract with Caltrain.
No,
they're not.
Amtrak. No, I'm just saying Amtrak has police.
Yeah,
Does
but-
Caltrain have police? Right. And Phil.
If
seems
they
to
are,
think
I've never encountered them. Let's put it that way. And I do ride
Exactly.
Caltrain often enough. Not that I need to be encountered with them, but I've never observed any.
Well, I do recall, there's a terrible echo on my end, by the way. Does everyone else have that?
Yeah, somebody's got an echo. I don't know who. If we could all go. If we
yeah,
could all go
everyone
on mute
mute.
when not talking.
Yeah. So I do recall Pat Lau talking about some specific safety measures for the stations. And I think actually, Greg, I saw that I put a question here about what are the blue lights. I think the blue lights might have been one of them. So I think there's a study, I think it was in Japan that she mentioned that there's blue lights that that they put that basically make you happier. Like that there's something about blue light that makes you less sad, and that they have found that putting that in areas that are hot zones are an issue. And I can't remember what, it was an early meeting of XCAPS, but and it might have been even a CAP meeting. I don't remember. But if you end up Googling blue lights, I would see about that.
Yeah, I could also drop her an email. And we can
Yeah.
find out.
Nadia, I have a comment just about the general structure of the chapter. I think the content's really good, but we jump right into some really heavy stuff. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to, just add a sentence or two at the beginning about what this chapter is and why we're going to jump right into all this stuff. I don't know. It was very jarring to just jump right into all these fatalities and not understand really where it was going to go and why it was sharing that information.
Okay.
So, like executive summary, like this chapter, we're going to discuss all the incidents we've had and what experts say to do about it or something like that. Like just introductory material.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the intro would be somewhere along the lines of, we think safety is an important reason why we need grade separations, and any changes we make to the rail corridor need to be done carefully so we can create the safest possible alternative.
Yep.
And
so I just put a fake
there are some
section there for you and
recommendations,
put a comment
like
for
that,
you.
Gregory. Yeah, okay, great.
Anybody else?
I'm going to go back to the station issue. If we're putting these fences up everywhere and making it tighter than a drum, but we're leaving the stations wide open, I'm afraid that might be attractive nuisance. That people who want to commit suicide will go to the station because there'll be no fence. And there are some designs where there is a fence that goes up, and then once the train is in the station, then the fence goes down. That certainly would be nice to have. I can't believe that we would have that money, but.
Well, I would say that as much as we've included a safety section and we're kind of giving them ideas for the entire corridor, the reality is that none of this, we don't actually have any grade separations near a station area. So we're sort of giving ideas, but we're out of our scope. So I think if we just put something about station areas and that ought to be something that they think about in the future, I think that's a broad enough placeholder that whoever picks up the ball next can think about that. Does that okay with the group? Because I don't want us to go on a huge deep dive on, station area safety and what have you.
Oh, no, but I think we should put that on the list of things to study.
Sure. Okay. Okay. And if you guys could mute your mics, that would be great. Now become hotspots. Okay. All right. Anybody else? There was a section here, Greg, about a campaign. A strong public education campaign should be planned and implemented to ensure that community residents are aware of the increased frequency and the speed of electrified trains. And my comment to you here was, isn't that why we're building grade separations? So
That, yeah, maybe that comment is again out of scope, right? I think that was probably Pat trying to say, yeah, once we electrify and trains start going faster, not that they're going to start going faster right now, that we should end education. Yeah, it might be out of context for the grade
Well,
separation.
Greg,
problem.
actually, I'm not sure of that because there will be some period of time when trains will be going faster, but we'll still have grade separations. If only because they can accelerate and decelerate faster
Correct.
between stations. And when trains are running on shoe-fly tracks, that can be especially
Yeah.
dangerous.
That's an excellent point. We should put that in. But so sorry, just to paraphrase what I think you're saying that before the grade separations are all installed, the trains will still be faster because the electric trains can accelerate
Yeah,
faster.
what that means in practice is they'll hit their top speeds a lot faster.
Right,
Well, I should say a lot less distance than
right.
they do now.
So when they're coming through Churchill, they may well be going faster than they are now,
Exactly.
which is probably not close to 79 miles an hour at the moment. Okay.
No, nowhere near that.
So we should mention those things.
so actually what I had put in my note was, I think that this is not something that's specific to Palo Alto. This is obviously all of Caltrain. And so I think the recommendation could be that we, Caltrain put this into their corridor-wide study. In other words, part of what we tell the city that they ought to advocate for this kind of education campaign and fencing and all of this stuff as part of the corridor-wide study. Because so far, I think they've looked at what they need to build grade separations. I don't think that they've considered the granular nuance of where they have to put fences or that they might need a PR campaign and how much that might cost relative to the, because they're still spitballing really big items here.
So maybe we should create a recommendations for the corridor-wide grade separation study section in here.
Yep. Okay.
And the electric trains are faster and they'll also be quieter.
Yeah, they will start and stop faster, which means they'll be running at top speed for more of the total distance between stations.
Yep.
And as you say, they'll be a lot quieter.
Okay. I put it in here. Oops. Yeah, I mean, to me, all of anything related to safety that it's going to have to be applied corridor wide, it's not just a Palo Alto issue, right? And so the fencing, the lights, the call boxes, the campaigns, the signs that they put on there, all of that is something that they have to do from San Francisco, all the way to Gilroy. And so we can have suggestions, but ultimately I think all these suggestions get rolled up into something that becomes, we hand it over to the city gives it to staff, and staff eventually, when they participate in the corridor-wide study, they hand it off to them. Does everyone generally agree with that?
Is there any faster way to get that information to Caltrain so it doesn't get lost in
Sure.
shuffles?
We can send it directly to them now. I'm just worried that they're many years away from receiving it, but sure, we could also send a copy of our report eventually to Caltrain.
I mean, we could send it to Sebastian Petty, who I think is a very reliable guy.
Yep.
And that way there'll be some institutional memory there.
Yep, and that's fine. I think yes to all of the above because people come and go. So, anybody else? Was there anything that stuck out that we were missing, or I thought that the incident data is a good way to lead into the safety chapter, as jarring as it is. I agree with Carrie. It's like we go from very mundane engineering stuff to suddenly these terrible stories.
But I honestly, in earlier drafts, I was probably even more maudlin, but I kind of wanted to, hit the reader over the head with, if we don't do this, we are taking a risk.
Yep. I think it works.
Okay.
And that's really what I'm getting at with the introductory stuff. Like I felt like that rationale, I'm about to share this kind of data with you because it's relevant to you know, just like giving it a little bit of context. And I literally mean 2 or 3 sentences, but
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful because it is hard
And
stuff.
yep, thank you, Carrie. I did want to say, I think early on we had a question. I think it was actually Phil's question about how to do citations, and I've actually decided it has been easier and it has been consistent in all the documents that I've edited, that I've ended up just putting a insert footnote here and then letting the footnote appear on the bottom of the page, because this methodology becomes a nightmare when we've got to kind of lump everything all together, and I think it gets lost finding it.
I just use the word capability, and I'll just push a button and say do it a different way. So yes,
Perfect.
that's fine.
So
Awesome.
Nadia, I learned, at least in Word, that it's easy to switch between footnotes and endnotes.
Great.
So
I'll
for
let
the
you Word
people-
people figure that part out. I'm just saying from the, I just put in footnotes and I,
Okay.
Footnotes are fine. Yeah.
great.
So
Awesome.
for the people taking my old chapter 4, it's easy to, if you're using Word, it's easy to flip.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else before we move on to the discarded section? Discarded ideas, not that it's a discarded section, just to be clear. All right, cool. So Greg, this is shared with you, yes? So you can see the yeah, you're on here.
Oh yeah, you're actually, yes. Yeah.
So-
So I will just do it.
Edits are
and-
right there for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I will footnote it, and I will address the things, and then I will clean it up and send it out a new copy. Cool.
Awesome. Okay. So now we'll move to, let's see, the discarded ideas one, which let me share again. Bear with me as I manage my mouse here. All right. So this is basically a little blurb of a section that for people following along and who are wondering, well, what about all these other ideas that happened, gives a sense of what was discarded before XCAP really began. So it talks about the citywide tunnel, the simple underpass, and the closure of Meadow. It's pretty short. I'll give you guys like 5 minutes. We'll read it now in real time, and then we can give some feedback to Carrie and Tony who worked on this. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Great, awesome. Okay, thoughts?
May I speak?
Sure, and then I'll take Dave.
So when I read this, my reaction was, what about South Palo Alto tunnels? That idea kind of came and went.
Well, this is ideas discarded before XCAP began. The South Palo Alto tunnels are being included in the part that Greg and Keith are working on, which is the fact that we studied South Palo Alto tunnels and then we XCAP did not study them further.
Okay, and Palo Alto Avenue.
Ah, that's a good point. Well, we already have in chapter 2, we talk about the fact that Palo Alto Avenue was discarded, was removed from study.
Okay, I just think, you know, for somebody who's new to this whole report, it might be useful to just acknowledge those
Okay.
two alternatives, if only to say full discussion is located elsewhere.
Oh, I think Larry's trying to say something, but he's muted.
He sure does look muted to me.
Okay, the South Palo Alto tunnels, we specifically studied and unanimously rejected, so they don't fit into this. The title to this chapter is Ideas Discarded Before XCAP Began. And so that would not be appropriate. As for Palo Alto Avenue, it's not an idea that was discarded before XCAP began. It's just not something that we studied.
Yeah, so Larry, I agree with your point, but I think, to me at least, the issue is that we may be parsing too finely here. That is, we need to tell people, here's a whole bunch of ideas that were discarded before XCAP began, which are all these. Oh, by the way, these other ideas were discarded for different reasons, and we discussed them elsewhere.
No, well, Palo Alto Avenue to me is in a totally different category because that's just an issue. What idea has been abandoned with regard to Palo Alto Avenue?
Yeah, this is discarded, not delayed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then we probably should see that somewhere in the report.
Yep,
We
it's
do.
it's in chapter 2.
Is it? Yeah.
All right.
And the Palo Alto tunnels are in the section on South Palo Alto.
Yeah, I don't mean to belabor the point, so I'll shut up now.
It's okay. Dave.
Hold on just a second. Are you suggesting that at the bottom of this chapter, we say for ideas that were considered by XCAP and then subsequently discarded, see some other chapter, that kind of point?
No, I think the point Phil was making was, should we say that Palo Alto Avenue was discarded before XCAP began? And Larry's point is that the idea itself, the concept itself was not discarded. We were
Right.
just told to ignore Palo
Right.
Alto Avenue. And that's already mentioned in chapter 2. So there's no need for edits here.
For no pointers, okay.
Dave.
Yeah, two things. Would we want pictures here, as we have in some of the other sections, or just text? So that's a question for the group.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about that, or just move on to the second?
No, let's talk about it, I guess, first.
Okay.
So I think under the citywide tunnel, I think we talked about it in the South Palo Alto section, Greg, that I certainly looked at. We have a piece in there and we sort of showed a picture of it and we talk about the fact that it was discarded. So there is some graphics to that. We might be able to put a pointer here to that page.
Yeah, I think given the amount of confusion we've already had, we should have a pointer that says we've discussed that in here.
Right. In chapter 3. And that'll be a note for me for later.
Now
And
I
the
am.
staff report has graphics in it, so it's
Great.
available through the link.
Yeah. And I think people will flip to this chapter if they want to. Well, you did put one picture in. I'm a little torn on the simple underpass one for several reasons. The Hatchmont study that was done in 2014 had a lot of, first of all, the files are enormous and they had a lot of property impacts. And I'm hesitant to put any pictures into a report that show property impacts that are not actually happening because those tend to get floated around the internet and used for different things. And so I'm happy just recognizing that it happened, but it was taken out.
I do find this second paragraph here confusing is the member of the public recognizing the underpasses? Is that the underpass we discussed in the South Palo Alto chapter? Or
Yeah,
is that
so
a different underpass?
no, it's the one that we're talking about in South Palo Alto. What this really refers to is Elizabeth Alexis's idea for fixing the underpass was an inspiration when she realized the problem of the 2014 designs and what they did wrong. And do we take this line out?
I think it's okay to say that, but then say this proposal is discussed in the other chapter.
Okay.
So don't think that there's yet
I like that
another,
idea.
there's yet another alternate underpass proposal, right?
Okay. This proposal is discussed.
On that subject, I think we sound too cutesy by saying a member of the public. Why don't we say Elizabeth?
Sure.
Keep a member of the public there and say her name, comma, a member of the public.
Yeah, great. Perfect.
I want to go back to the introductory paragraph, Nadia.
I have one more, if you wouldn't mind. Can
Okay, let me take Dave's first, and then Larry will go back to you. Sure, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, thanks. The Churchill hybrid and the Churchill reverse hybrid were discarded also.
Oh, good point. But those were these are discarded before XCAP, so you should have those in your Churchill section. Oh no, these were just. You're right. Those were discarded before.
I mentioned it just as the timeline because you said all options.
Yep.
But if you're going to talk about these, they definitely belong here because they were discarded well before us. Yeah.
So Dave, could you provide Carrie with what those are? I'll just make a note up here that we need to add the Churchill hybrid. And what was the other one?
Reverse hybrid. And I guess they probably were considered at one point simple underpasses at Churchill too, weren't there? Like way back.
I think so. The hybrid is actually the train elevated, the road depressed, and then the reverse hybrid is a road overpass. And sorry, what's the one that you just said?
I meant we did consider simple underpasses at Churchill at one
that's
time.
actually that's actually the simple underpass here was actually for Meadow and Charleston, was for Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston.
Yeah, exactly. We should
Good catch. Thank you.
Yep. And so if there's any, I'll just put a note here, add detail if needed. And so if there's, I don't remember if there's anything else that you might want to say about it, but just so that you see that as something new. And I'll just put here, I'm going to edit this comment and say, Dave to give Carrie details. Okay, Larry, you had something else?
Oh, very simple thing in 311. We need to have the council mentioned. All we say is that they were, we need a noun. They were determined to be in.
Okay. They were determined by city council.
Thank you. Good catch.
Yep. Okay, next. I can't see everybody at once on my gallery view for some reason. So if I don't see you, feel free to just chime in.
I have a question for Charleston Meadow. Wasn't there an overpass considered? Or is that rejected very early?
The overpass was considered, and I think not even, so it's confusing, right? Because there was at one point 37 different alternatives, and a lot of them were discarded. And so going back to what Dave brought up of the Churchill options that were discarded, there was sort of one lump removal of things, and maybe it would be helpful to list out what those are. I had trouble finding that document that had the original 37. I know that it exists, but I spent a long time in the 2018, 2017, and I just couldn't find it. If maybe Philip, I don't know if you might be able to dig up or rip in that original list of whatever's, we might be able to just list all of them because frankly,
hey, Nadia,
there was a lot.
I just put into chat where I found them all.
Oh, okay. In the chat, where's my chat window here?
And at that time, I think there were only 34, not 37.
Yeah, or 34. Yeah, I think it's 34.
but they're all listed here that I can see.
I don't see where my chat window is. Can you just email it to me, Dave? And we'll
Yeah.
do it old school. Actually, email it to me and copy Carrie so she has it, and then we can figure out offline what's the best way to kind of put that in there.
Yeah, by the way, that
Um,
document includes a timeline, which might be very helpful.
Okay.
Should we?
It's also linked to from mine. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Should we enumerate all of them, or just refer to, like in the executive summary, 34 in all 34 alternatives were looked at by City Council, and here's ones we're going to expand upon, or do we want a little?
Yeah, that's
paragraph for
probably a better
each?
way to. That's probably a better way to do it. I think we can. I mean, I think maybe I'm changing my idea now, and chime in, please. But maybe we don't talk about the hybrid, this one, the hybrid and the reverse hybrid and whatever, and we just make reference to the fact that there was several of them were not carried forward, and then make reference to that list, and people can go look at it. And to your point, Carrie, we're just going to elaborate on a few that are common questions, and then just leave it there. I think that should be enough.
All right, we'll give that a try, and you know, if anybody has other thoughts, please share them.
Yeah.
Now we're on email.
Anybody else?
I just want to sort of review the bidding here. I don't think, I want to make sure that we don't go into a description of the 27 or 28, whatever it would be.
No.
Alternative, because that, I think that would put our reader to sleep right at the start on irrelevant. Can we find a way to say, or maybe this is what you were saying, that we just want to discuss the most prominent of those that were
Yes.
rejected? And
Yeah, that's the idea. So Carrie will add a line in here that says there were 34 of them. They were whittled down on this date. You can see the full list here. Below, we're just going to describe ones that we get asked about often or whatever. And here they are. And that way,
Well said.
yeah. I mean, you know, it's difficult because we're writing a document on what has been our process, but really for the CAP members, especially, this has been going on. We're sort of recapping 2 years of work and not just our timeline of work. And so there's just a lot there. And it frankly blurs together a bit. Okay, anything else? This sentence seemed really long, Carrie. I won't edit it here, but I think if you could just take a look at it and maybe shorten it up a little bit, it just seemed a little windy. But I think generally addressing that the closure of Meadow is not possible is important. I'm pretty sure that Meadow has more traffic also than Churchill. I think it's like 12,200 and Churchill is 9,600 too, but may or may not want to put that in there.
Yeah, I actually have the number in the safety report, although that's FRA data. There may be a different number from.
Yes. Okay. I was like, I just saw that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there's a chart because the FRA has a table of, I don't know where they get the number of how many cars they think cross the intersection each day before COVID, of course.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, cool. So I will leave that for Carrie, and if Tony can help, great, to just kind of make those minor edits. And then if it's okay with you guys, because we've got a bit more time on the clock, we can look together. We can start Dave's section and just take a look and see what folks think and kind of what's missing. I talked to Dave a little bit about it. Let me find my, so I don't have, Dave, I'm requesting edit access right now because it's not currently shared with me. So you should just get that now, but let me share my screen. And for ex-cappers, this was made available as part of today's late agenda. So you can take a look at that there.
Okay, Nadia, you should be able to edit.
Okay, cool. I'm going to give you guys a minute to read that. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up my timeline that I want to show you.
Nadia, what are we supposed to be looking at? I don't see any text. Can't hear you.
Muted, Nadia.
You're muted.
Sorry, too many windows open. I was asking you guys to read your, or take a scroll through what Dave gave us today, which is the Churchill section. And so that's available on the updated agenda. So if you go to the website and you look at the updated agenda, you should have the latest copy. I'm going to put it back on the screen now.
I just linked it in chat too.
Oh, perfect. Oh, this is the chat you were talking about. It just dawned on me. I was looking for my Google chat before. Okay. And let me share my screen. So you see Dave has kind of an executive summary. Then he's got this thing of a timeline of kind of important moments in the life of Churchill, basically. And then he goes on to describe the viaduct. He's got some pictures, which is great. And then the partial underpass. So question about whether we want to keep all this nomenclature. I think we might want to take that out. I think that might get confusing after a while. Or maybe not. Maybe it's easier. I'm open to suggestions.
Nadia,
Yep.
if we're going to even refer to that document that contains 34 alternatives, they use this nomenclature there. So this will help to tie these alternatives, which are being kept, to that overall list.
Okay. I don't know if they developed codes for the new ones. So somebody would have to find that. Like, I don't know if the underpass alternative, for example, Elizabeth's underpass alternative has a letter.
Well, I think we're capable of creating our own.
I think we are. Good point.
I don't know. I mean, our list is so short. I hate having these cryptic abbreviations when you only have a handful of options.
Yeah. And so I'm worried about it becomes an insider baseball, but you have to know all the terms.
Nadia, I thought we were going to have some additional work done on this before we considered it as a full group.
What I was just gonna, we're gonna do some more work. So, but what I wanted to give Dave feedback on is he cut and pasted. And if anyone else, as they're scrolling through, is like, oh, I don't see this or I don't see that, we can give Dave some feedback now. He's gonna come back and he'll do more. There's more time for him to amend this. So we're not gonna edit the rest of this now. But as people scroll through, like what I caught, for example, is that for the compare and contrast, he just kind of cut and pasted the matrix. And so what I talked about a little bit offline was we need to sort of put this into words because it's difficult to kind of necessarily understand how to read this. And we want to be able to have it in words for folks who aren't as well versed in the matrix as we are.
Agree.
And then in scrolling through, he's got a piece
Hey,
of
Nadia, question about that?
Yeah.
Do you want to leave the screenshots in there of the charts, and then I have talk about it like under near it, or but before it or after it?
Sure. I think, to be honest, the screenshots are going to be hard to read because the document's going to be an 8.5 by 11. So really, once this gets printed, you're not going to be able to see it. We're going to have to I think what'll end up happening, what I envision happening is having the piece of paper, like having it be an entire page in there and kind of inserted in. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'll take them out.
Before that section. But
Could
you
you
might want
just
to
refer to it? I mean, I feel like
Yeah, that's what I'm
should
saying. We'll
always just-
refer to it, but there'll be a
yeah.
printout of it right there immediately at that section, so that then you
Oh.
can flip to it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, just you wouldn't want it to get out of sync or something.
Yeah, unclear to me. This is where my, I'm sort of struggling. I haven't written a very big report in Word in a very long time. So if folks have better ideas, I'm totally open to them. But I did just mean that there still has to be sort of a Word section in here. I think having the PAUSD stuff and the Palo Alto Police and Fire is super helpful. And then we owe you the minority opinions, so we'll send you that. So otherwise, if anybody in just scrolling through this has some feedback for Dave, great. Yeah, go for it.
I don't necessarily agree with the sort of list of priorities for the majority opinion. I know that there are 4 good reasons in there why some of us voted for it, but I know in my own case, the ability to make a really good experience for bicycles and pedestrians in the Churchill area was actually, probably my most important reason. And I'm not saying put it first, but I would love to see on there some consideration of, we have the ability to make a very safe and potentially even pleasant experience for cyclists and pedestrians in the area if we do this.
Okay.
I agree with Gregory. That was important to me as well. And specifically, there was a bunch of items from the bike ped plan that would be required as part of the mitigation, and those are items that had been kind of sidelined in the most recent discussions of priorities. If we did, outside of this project, and that was a way to bring some of those important improvements in.
I think another one along those lines is that it would would enhance the biking experience. I think we had several people testify to.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
I'm treating this as more of an outline because I think that expand on, I mean, just for example, lowest cost, when you just say lowest cost option, I think you need to give some meat on those bones by saying it would save X million dollars as compared to the next lowest cost option. And I think we also need to talk there about when we get to minimize construction time, it's the same thing. How many months of construction would this save and so forth. So because I'm knowing the people who are going to write the minority opinion, I know they're going to go into some detail.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, anything where you've just got sort of more of a bulleted list, I think we've got to put words that sort of describe things well. And I think up here you're fine because it's just explaining describing what the pictures say. But I'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate to read through this whole thing and say, oh yeah, we picked it because it was cheapest.
Yeah.
We could have spent a lot less time if we were just picking the cheapest thing every time. So,
all right. Well, I don't want to beat up on Dave too bad because I just wanted to give like first impressions so people could give him feedback. And that's only because with the Brown Act, it's hard for us to keep swapping sections, right? So Dave, does that give you something to go on?
Yep, thanks. Actually, Greg, if you and Carrie too, or anybody else want to give me a quick sentence and also supporting text for that, whatever you want to put in there. Those were a lot of this stuff I extracted from the minutes that were posted for that particular meeting. So that's all I did was just I took each one of those and stuck them in here. So whatever more we want to write or is fine with me.
Yeah, I'm happy to pitch in.
Thanks.
And then when it gets to be my turn to edit, I can also do some as well. But
Cool.
Thank
And
you.
just for reference, this is not seen the light of day yet, but just to give you guys a sense of what it looks like. So a couple things. One is, this is the one I've been working with Keith and Greg on, which is the South Palo Alto options. So I did make a master timeline, which I think we discussed today. We're going to break out into its own section. And so, but it has sort of everything from 2008 when high-speed rail passed to kind of when the blended system happens, to when they get funding, to when Caltrain and them sign an MOU. I mean, kind of all the stuff you'd ever want to know. But it also gets into more detailed things about like when the council voted for the different alternatives and how the citywide tunnel changed into the South Palo Alto tunnel, all those gory details. So there's a timeline for that, which, as I said, I'll break out. But then as an example, so we do talk about the citywide tunnel, which was removed.
Hey, Nadia,
Yeah,
can I make a comment about your timeline?
yeah.
I don't suppose you can consider going back and footnoting those to the actual meetings on this.
I have a footnoted version. So I had a Word version, and when I stuck it into the table, it lost all the footnotes, but thankfully I copied it. So I'm going to try to do that because it is very hard to find those things, and
Yeah,
it would
totally.
be useful to have a footnoted version. But it's already an 8-page timeline, so you can imagine. But yes, I do have a version like that, which I can share. So then we do have a thing, we have a little bit more detail here on the tunnel that was removed. So Greg, we might want to share this afterwards with Carrie. So if she wants, I think it might have like at least one more link to something which people can look at. And then what Greg and I worked on and Keith for the pros and cons section. I'm skipping this part, which is just, hold on. Let me scroll to a better section. So what he did was he did compare and contrast alternatives and used the city council criteria and kind of went through and explained how each of these works with those in a sentence or two.
yeah, my hope was that a council person, I didn't want to leave the entire like 47 page South Palo Alto section that said, we can't decide, you figure it out. I wanted to say, look, here are the parameters. This
Yeah,
one
I
is
like
more
that.
expensive. This one looks different. This one, has a longer construction time and so on.
I like
So
that.
I want to keep this section from getting too long also. So we have to be a little more careful. As we all work on it, each one of us is going to make it longer. So at
Yeah.
the end, so we may have to go back and make it shorter again.
And part of that is what Larry and I will end up doing once we kind of do a read, but we need
Yeah.
enough information in there to then, make it succinct enough. But also, quite frankly, I mean, a part of this, it has to go into posterity. And so when you're caught between, well, do I add all this information or do I just cut it out? In some ways, it's better to keep some of that stuff because
Well,
for
this
people
section can refer to other stuff too. So, yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. So for example, here on the noise section, we cut and pasted from the noise thing and put it in, right? So you could even have a reprint of the same thing that talks about the Churchill options and highlights those in that section. So that should give you a sense of minimize disruption. So we just made like a little paragraph for each of those. Okay. So just going back to, yeah, Tony. Tony, you're muted. If you can see us on Zoom, Tony, it's on the lower left thing of your screen where you see all of our heads, where it has mute. Okay, he's saying we'll go back to him. Oh, and now he's leaving. Okay. Okay, so what we just did today, we reviewed the discarded alternatives during today's meeting. So Carrie and Tony, if you want to bring back some more stuff for the next one, we can do that. And then same for the safety chapter. And so Greg, you'll have a heavier load because you're also working on the South Palo Alto thing. So, kind of do what you can do to get it done. We can talk about offline of what needs to come back for the next meeting. But basically, if folks can have their things in by Monday, November 30th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving, then that gives Sarah time to post it. She will have to send the agenda out before, but the amended agenda with the actual latest version of the documents won't go out until that Monday. So that'll give you guys some time to be able to get something out. I realize I have not done public comment, so let me on this section. So if there's any members of the public who wanted to speak on our report writing section, please raise your hand now. Going once, going twice. Okay, it looks like nobody has a comment. So anyway, going back to this timeline, I will share this 2-pager that or 3-pager that I made with everybody so you guys can follow my logic. I'll add here if the safety section and discarded alternatives can be added, that'd be great. And then I'll put them here on what we're going to discuss, because hopefully it's only if we have some substantive edits that we have to discuss it. And each of these will probably come back for multiple iterations. It's just, I'm trying to give everybody time, and people will have different weeks where they'll have more time and less time based on whether they have a heavy writing section or not. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Something we didn't address? Yeah, Tony.
Nadia, I'm not sure exactly where this goes, but some of us, I think, were a little bit uncomfortable with exporting mitigations to other neighborhoods and on the closure. While I think that might be the best option, I'm still worried, as I said before, that traffic from Churchill now has to go through Professorville.
Okay, so Keith, Phil, and I are the ones writing the dissenting opinion, and we should have that to you at the next meeting. So you guys will all get a chance to chime in on that section and see if we got it right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm just looking here. The dissenting opinion should also come out here too. Sorry, this is kind of also from my working notes to be able to talk with staff afterwards too. So bear with me all. So there'll be a lot to have read by the Monday after Thanksgiving. Obviously we do what we can. And if this goes longer, it's going to go longer. I just know we're also all kind of sick of doing this. So if we can make a final push, then hopefully we can be done. My dream is to not have to think of XCAP after the first of the year, but I recognize that that might be kind of wishful thinking.
Just to throw it out there, the weekly pace is what's hardest for me. I know that some other folks, and you're mentioning, want to wrap it up as quickly as possible, but doing it weekly, especially considering I have adjacent obligations, it's just really hard on me. So
yeah, I understand.
If it goes, into January, but I get a breather, it's okay with me.
Okay.
But I recognize I'm not speaking for everyone.
Yep. Agreed. Anybody else want to chime in on the schedule? I don't want to burn anybody out, and I recognize we're already many years in at this point for some of us, so I want to be sensitive to that.
I think you're on the right track. I would love to take a couple weeks off, but I would rather get it done with. So
yeah,
lesser of two evils.
Exactly. Yeah. And based on the Brown Act limitations, there's up to 4 of us can work on any section. So if you've only got 3 in your section and you feel like you need to pull in extra support, you can always ask for that. We can of course talk to each other to say, is there anyone available for this section or that section, and understand what's going on. We can't discuss content, but we can certainly schedule amongst ourselves. So feel free to do that if you need to. All right, I think that's all we have for today. I'll share this document with everybody shortly. And unless anybody has anything else, I think we are done for the day.
That's kind of unusual.
I know it is. Well, go write. You have all this time now.
I can go make
go
dinner
dig into
early.
the edits.
You can have an earlier dinner.
Oh, all right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Good precedent. We should set a precedent here.
Oh, okay. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanksgiving to you
Thank you all.
We're not going to meet again before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Bye.
Have a happy Thanksgiving. Stay
Happy
safe.
Thanksgiving,
turkey,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanksgiving.
Enjoy your
Bye-bye.
turkey. Bye.
Bye.